There are moments in human history when heaven seems to tear the veil separating the eternal from the temporal, when divine light breaks into our world to bring a message of hope, warning, and infinite love. Fátima, 1917. 3 young shepherds, 6 apparitions that shook the world, and 3 secrets that, more than a century later, continue to challenge our hearts and test our faith. What really happened in that small corner of Portugal? Why did the Mother of God choose to reveal herself to 3 humble children in the midst of World War I? And above all, what do these secrets mean for us today, at this precise moment in history? Join me on this spiritual journey through one of the most extraordinary and documented Marian events of all time, where we will discover how Our Lady's prophecies have been fulfilled with soul-stirring precision, inviting us to a profound conversion of heart. Portugal, May 1917. Europe burns in the flames of the Great War. Millions of men die in the trenches. Marxist atheism advances threateningly from the east, and humanity seems to be plunging into unprecedented darkness. It is in this historical context of pain and despair that heaven decides to intervene, not in the capitals of power, not in the halls of the world's great leaders, but in Cova da Iria, a barren and forgotten place, before 3 illiterate children who barely knew their letters but who had pure hearts ready to receive the message of the Almighty. Lucia dos Santos, 10 years old, and her cousins Francisco and Jacinta Marto, 9 and 7 years old respectively, were shepherds like so many other children of the time, accustomed to the hard life of the countryside, to the simple prayer of the rosary, and to the constant presence of God in everyday life. But God, in His infinite wisdom, had chosen them to be instruments of a divine plan that would transcend all borders and reach to the ends of the earth. These 3 small prophets did not seek visions or extraordinary revelations. They simply fulfilled their duty while caring for their family's sheep. But the Lord had prepared for them an encounter that would mark their lives forever and transform the history of the Church in the 20th century. Already in 1916, a year before the apparitions of the Virgin Mary, the 3 shepherd children had received the visit of the Angel of Portugal, who had taught them profound prayers of reparation and spiritually prepared them for what was to come. The angel had told them words that would remain engraved in their souls. "Do not be afraid, I am the angel of peace. Pray with me." And he taught them that sublime prayer. "My God, I believe, I adore, I hope, and I love you. I ask pardon for those who do not believe, do not adore, do not hope, and do not love you." This angelic preparation was not coincidental. It was divine pedagogy preparing docile instruments to receive a message that would require from them total surrender, heroic witness, and unwavering fidelity in the face of persecution and misunderstanding. When May 13, 1917 finally arrived, the day of the first apparition of Our Lady, the children had already been formed in the school of sacrifice and deep prayer. That morning, while shepherding in Cova da Iria, they suddenly saw lightning in the clear sky, and thinking a storm was coming, they decided to go down with the sheep. Then they saw another flash of lightning, and upon a small holm oak tree, a lady dressed in white appeared, more brilliant than the sun, radiating a light clearer and more intense than a crystal glass filled with crystalline water pierced by the rays of the most ardent sun. They drew so close that they were within the light that surrounded her, a light that emanated from her very being and enveloped them with indescribable peace and joy. The lady spoke to them with a sweet and maternal voice, asking, "Will you offer yourselves to God to bear all the sufferings He wishes to send you, in an act of reparation for the sins by which he is offended and of supplication for the conversion of sinners. Lucia, filled with supernatural courage, responded, "Yes, we will." And then the Blessed Virgin told them those words that would be the spiritual program of their lives. "Then you are going to suffer much, but the grace of God will be your comfort." This first apparition already established the tone of the entire Fátima message, a message that would not be of cheap consolation or easy promises, but of a profound call to conversion, redemptive sacrifice, and reparation for sins that offend the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The Virgin asked them to return there for 6 consecutive months, on the 13th of each month at the same time, and promised that in October she would tell them who she was and what she wanted. From that moment, the lives of the 3 shepherd children changed radically. Francisco, who could see the Virgin but not hear her voice, dedicated himself with extraordinary fervor to console Jesus and Our Lady for the sins of mankind. Jacinta, the youngest, became a victim of love, continually offering sacrifices for the conversion of sinners, and Lucia was appointed as the spokesperson, the guardian of the message that she would have to transmit to the entire world. On June 13th, in the second apparition, there were already about 50 people accompanying the children, attracted by the radiant testimony of the small visionaries. On this occasion, the Virgin revealed something that would cause great commotion and constitute a fundamental part of the Fátima message. When Lucia asked if the 3 of them would go to heaven, the Mother of God responded with words that mixed promise and prophecy. "Yes, I will take Jacinta and Francisco soon, but you will stay here a little longer. Jesus wants to use you to make me known and loved. He wants to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart. To those who embrace it, I promise salvation, and these souls will be dear to God, like flowers placed by me to adorn His throne." Here appears for the first time explicitly the heart of the Fátima message, devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary as a sure path to salvation. But there was more, something that would make Lucia cry bitterly when she returned home. The Virgin showed them her Immaculate Heart surrounded by thorns, a symbol of humanity's sins that constantly pierce it, and asked them to pray the Rosary every day to obtain peace in the world and the end of the war. This insistence on the Rosary, which would be repeated in all the apparitions, is not just one devotion among others, but the spiritual weapon par excellence to combat evil and obtain the conversion of souls. July arrived, the month in which the prophetic core of the Fátima message would be revealed, what would later be known as the 3 Secrets. On July 13, 1917, between 5,000 and 6,000 people gathered in Cova da Iria, but only the 3 children could see and hear the Blessed Virgin. It was in this apparition that Our Lady entrusted to the shepherd children the great secret, which they guarded zealously for years. Decades later, when it was finally revealed, the world would understand the gravity of the message and the urgency of the conversion that heaven was asking for. The first secret was the vision of hell. Lucia described it with these chilling words. "Our Lady showed us a great sea of fire, which seemed to be under the earth. Plunged in this fire were demons and souls in human form, like transparent burning embers, all blackened or burnished bronze, floating about in the conflagration, now raised into the air by the flames that issued from within themselves, together with great clouds of smoke, now falling back on every side like sparks in huge fires, without weight or equilibrium, amid shrieks and groans of pain and despair, which horrified us and made us tremble with fear. This terrible vision was not given to terrify, but to show the reality of hell, a truth of faith that the modern world prefers to ignore or deny. The Virgin wanted us to understand that hell is real, that souls are condemned for their sins, and that there is a dramatic urgency in working for the conversion of sinners. Before the horror of that vision, the Blessed Virgin consoled the children, saying, "You have seen hell, where the souls of poor sinners go. To save them, God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart. If what I say to you is done, many souls will be saved and there will be peace." And here begins the second secret, a prophecy that would be fulfilled with astonishing accuracy in the following years. The Mother of God warned, "The war is going to end, but if people do not cease offending God, a worse one will break out during the pontificate of Pius X. When you see a night illumined by an unknown light, know that this is the great sign given you by God that He is about to punish the world for its crimes by means of war, famine, and persecutions of the Church and of the Holy Father." These prophetic words were fulfilled to the letter. World War I ended in 1918, but since humanity did not convert nor cease offending God, World War II came, which indeed began during the pontificate of Pius X, and the announced sign, the night illumined by an unknown light, manifested on January 25, 1938, when an extraordinary aurora borealis lit up the skies of Europe, a phenomenon so unusual in those latitudes that scientists were perplexed and many feared it was the end of the world. Lucia immediately recognized the sign that Our Lady had predicted 21 years earlier. But the message did not end with the warning. It also included the remedy, the divine solution to avoid the punishments. To prevent this, I shall come to ask for the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart and the communion of reparation on the first Saturdays. If my requests are heeded, Russia will be converted and there will be peace. If not, she will spread her errors throughout the world, causing wars and persecutions of the Church. The good will be martyred. The Holy Father will have much to suffer. Various nations will be annihilated. Remember that in July 1917, when these words were given, Russia was still the empire of the Tsars. Atheist communism had not yet taken power. Lenin had not yet arrived in Petrograd. But 3 months later, in October 1917, the Bolshevik Revolution would break out, installing the first atheist state in history, which for 70 years would relentlessly persecute the Church, cause the death of millions of people, and spread its errors throughout the world just as the Virgin had prophesied. The accuracy of this prediction is simply overwhelming. 3 illiterate children, who probably did not even know where Russia was, transmitted a prophecy that would be fulfilled with millimetric precision in the following decades. How can we explain this without recognizing supernatural intervention? How can we deny that it was truly the Mother of God who was speaking? But along with the warning came also a luminous promise, a message of hope that would sustain the Church in its darkest hours. In the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. The Holy Father will consecrate Russia to me, and she will be converted, and a period of peace will be granted to the world. This prophecy of the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary is the beacon of hope that illuminates the entire Fátima message. It is not a prediction of catastrophes without escape, but an announcement of final victory, of conversion, of peace. And indeed, we have seen in our time extraordinary signs of the fulfillment of this promise. The popes, especially Paul VI, John Paul II, and Francis, have consecrated the world and Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And we have seen how, unexpectedly for all political analysts, the Soviet Empire collapsed without a world war, allowing faith to flourish again in those martyred lands. Coincidence? Those who have faith recognize in these historical events the provident hand of God and the fulfillment of the promise made by Our Lady at Fátima. The second secret ended with an enigmatic phrase that would only be understood decades later. In Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved. This apparently simple statement took on profound meaning when it was seen how, indeed, while much of Europe fell under Nazism or communism, Portugal remained faithful to the Catholic faith, being a refuge for thousands of persecuted during World War II. The third secret was the most mysterious and guarded. For decades it generated speculation, rumors, conspiracy theories, and all kinds of conjectures. The children wrote it down and it was kept in a sealed envelope with instructions that it not be opened until 1960 or earlier, if the Bishop of Leiria decided. But when 1960 arrived, Pope John XIII decided not to reveal it, generating even more mystery. It was not until the year 2000, after the assassination attempt against John Paul II in St. Peter's Square on May 13, 1981, precisely the feast day of Our Lady of Fátima, that the Vatican finally decided to reveal the content of the third secret. Lucia's description was striking. We saw a bishop dressed in white. We had the impression that it was the Holy Father. Other bishops, priests, religious men and women were going up a steep mountain at the top of which there was a big cross of rough-hewn trunks as of a cork tree with the bark. Before reaching there, the Holy Father passed through a big city half in ruins and half trembling with halting step, afflicted with pain and sorrow. He prayed for the souls of the corpses he met on his way. Having reached the top of the mountain, on his knees at the foot of the big cross, he was killed by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows at him, and in the same way there died one after another the other, bishops, priests, religious men and women, and various lay people of different ranks and positions. This apocalyptic vision has been interpreted in various ways. John Paul II himself saw in it a prefiguration of the assassination attempt he suffered in 1981, from which he miraculously survived, attributing his salvation to the intervention of Our Lady of Fátima. One of the bullets that should have caused his death lodged millimeters from his aorta, and the Pope was convinced that a maternal hand guided the trajectory of the bullet, allowing the dying Pope to stop at the threshold of death. Subsequently, that bullet was set in the crown of the image of Our Lady of Fátima in the Portuguese sanctuary as permanent testimony of Mary's maternal protection. But the third secret goes beyond the assassination attempt against a pope. Then Cardinal Ratzinger, the future Benedict XVI, who wrote the official theological commentary on the third secret, explained that the vision refers to the martyrdom of the Church in the 20th century, to the terrible persecutions that Christians suffered under totalitarian regimes. The millions of martyrs of the last century, the bishops, priests, and religious, killed in Russia, Spain, Mexico, China, and so many other places, the profane churches, the closed seminaries, the dispersed religious communities. All of this is prefigured in the apocalyptic vision of the third secret, but it can also be interpreted as a prophetic warning that still remains valid, as a call to be vigilant before the threats that continue to lurk over the Church in our days. The apparitions of Fátima continued monthly until October. On August 13th, the civil authorities, enemies of religion, kidnapped the 3 children and attempted through threats to make them reveal the secret or deny the apparitions. They imprisoned them, threatened to boil them in oil, but the small prophets remained firm, ready to die rather than betray the Blessed Virgin. Finally, they were released, and on August 19th, Our Lady appeared to them in Valinhos, not in Covadairia, reiterating her message of prayer and penance. In the September apparition, the Virgin announced that in October she would perform a miracle so that all would believe. And indeed, on October 13, 1917, the most extraordinary and public event of all the Fátima apparitions occurred, the miracle of the sun, witnessed by more than 70,000 people, including skeptical journalists, anti-clerical masons, and people of all social conditions. On that rainy day, after the Virgin said goodbye to the children and rose toward the east, Lucia shouted to the crowd, "Look at the sun!" And then the impossible happened. The sun, which had been hidden behind the clouds, appeared like an opaque silver disk that could be looked at without hurting the eyes. Suddenly it began to spin vertiginously on itself, casting rays of light of all the colors of the spectrum on the people, the trees, and the earth. Then it seemed to detach from the firmament and plunge in a zigzag toward the earth, causing panic among the crowd who thought the end of the world had come. Many fell to their knees confessing their sins aloud, convinced they would die at that instant. Finally, the sun returned to its place and everyone noticed with astonishment that their clothes, soaked by the torrential rain, were completely dry. This miracle was witnessed and documented by tens of thousands of people, reported in the newspapers of the time, including the anti-clerical newspaper O Século, whose special envoy, Avelino de Almeida, wrote a detailed article describing the extraordinary phenomenon he had witnessed. The solar phenomenon was seen not only in Cova da Iria, but in a radius of many kilometers around, by people who had no idea what was happening in Fátima. Scientists have not been able to satisfactorily explain this event. If it had been a real astronomical phenomenon, it would have been observed in the entire terrestrial hemisphere and would have had catastrophic consequences. If it had been a collective optical illusion, how can we explain that thousands of people in different places, looking from different angles, saw exactly the same thing? How can we explain that wet clothes dried instantly? How can we explain that the phenomenon occurred exactly on the day and time predicted by 3 peasant children? The miracle of the sun is one of the best documented supernatural events in modern history, an irrefutable sign that heaven had visited earth in Fátima. In that last apparition, the Virgin finally identified herself. "I am the Lady of the Rosary," and she reiterated her fundamental request: pray the Rosary every day. Do not offend God our Lord anymore, for He is already too much offended. After October 1917, the lives of the 3 shepherd children took paths that confirmed everything the Virgin had told them. Francisco, the silent mystic who only wanted to console Jesus, fell ill with the Spanish flu in 1918 and died on April 4th, 1919, at barely 11 years of age, after offering all his sufferings for the conversion of sinners. Shortly before dying, he told Lucia, "I'm going to heaven, but from there I'm going to pray very much for you, for Jacinta, for the Holy Father, for Portugal, and for all sinners." He died with a smile on his lips, looking toward the window as if he saw something beautiful that no one else could see. Jacinta, the youngest, was perhaps the one who lived the Fátima message with the greatest intensity. She became a true expiatory victim, continually seeking sacrifices to offer for the conversion of sinners. She also fell ill, first with flu and then with purulent pleurisy that caused her terrible pain. She had to be hospitalized in a hospital in Lisbon, far from her family, where she died alone on February 20th, 1920, at barely 10 years old. Before dying, she had several more visions of the Virgin, who revealed to her things about the future of the Church and entrusted her to tell Lucia that the Holy Father would have much to suffer. Her incorrupt body, discovered years later when it was transferred to Fátima, is another sign of the holiness of these small visionaries. Both Francisco and Jacinta were beatified by John Paul II in the year 2000 and canonized by Pope Francis in 2017, thus becoming the youngest non-martyr saints in the history of the Church. Lucia, for her part, lived to be 97 years old, fulfilling the mission that the Virgin had entrusted to her of spreading devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. She entered religious life, first as a Dorothean sister, and then as a Discalced Carmelite under the name Sister Mary Lucia of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart. During her long years of conventual life, she wrote several memoirs detailing the apparitions and the graces received, always under obedience to her superiors. In 1925, already a religious in Pontevedra, Spain, she had a new apparition of the Virgin, who explained to her the practice of communion of reparation on the first Saturdays, a devotion that Our Lady had promised in Fátima. On June 13, 1929, in Tuy, she had the vision of the Blessed Trinity and Our Lady, who told her that the time had come to ask the Holy Father for the consecration of Russia to her Immaculate Heart. From then on, Sister Lucia wrote several letters to different popes transmitting this request from heaven. Finally, on March 25, 1984, Pope John Paul II, together with all the bishops of the world, performed the consecration of the world and Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Shortly after, the fall of communism in Eastern Europe began, a process that would culminate with the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, an event that no one had foreseen and that experts considered impossible. Sister Lucia confirmed that this consecration had been accepted by heaven and that the promise of the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary was being fulfilled. She died in holiness on February 13, 2005, leaving a spiritual legacy that continues to transform millions of lives throughout the world. The Fátima message is not simply a historical event of the past, it is a living and urgent message for our time. When we look at today's world, with its wars, its moral relativism, its silent apostasy, its culture of death that promotes abortion and euthanasia, its rejection of God and His commandments, do we not see the fulfillment of Our Lady's warnings? She told us that if humanity did not convert, Russia would spread its errors throughout the world. And although political communism has largely fallen, do we not see how the errors of atheistic materialism, of moral relativism, of the rejection of natural law and objective truth have spread throughout the world, even in traditionally Christian nations? The Virgin warned us about persecutions of the Church, and are we not seeing in our days how Christians are the most persecuted religious group in the world, with thousands being martyred every year in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia? She warned us that the Holy Father would have much to suffer, and we have seen how recent popes have had to face terrible crises, from the abuse scandals that have stained the face of the Church to external and internal attacks against the Catholic faith. She showed us hell so that we would understand that souls are condemned. And do we not see how the modern world denies the existence of hell, of sin, of the need for conversion and salvation? The Fátima message is a cry of love from a mother who sees her children walking toward the abyss and extends her hand to save them. But along with the warnings, Fátima also offers us the remedy, the path of salvation that heaven proposes to us. This path has several fundamental elements that we must incorporate into our lives if we want to be faithful to Our Lady and cooperate in the triumph of her Immaculate Heart. The first and most insistent is the daily praying of the Holy Rosary. In each of the 6 apparitions, the Virgin asked that the rosary be prayed every day. It is not an optional suggestion. It is an urgent maternal request. The rosary is the spiritual weapon par excellence to combat evil, to obtain peace, for the conversion of sinners. When we meditate on the mysteries of the rosary, we traverse the entire life of Christ from the Incarnation to His glorification, accompanied by Mary. Each Hail Mary is like a rose that we place at the feet of our Mother, forming a spiritual crown that she will present before the throne of God. The popes have insisted time and again on the importance of the rosary. St. John Paul II wrote a complete apostolic letter about the rosary, adding the luminous mysteries and calling it my favorite prayer. Padre Pio said that the rosary is the most powerful weapon we have to defend our souls. St. Teresa of Calcutta never stopped praying her daily rosary. And yet, how many Catholics have abandoned this practice, considering it outdated or repetitive? Our Lady of Fátima calls us to rediscover this fundamental devotion, to make it an integral part of our daily life, praying it as a family if possible, offering it for the intentions she asked of us: peace in the world, the conversion of sinners, the needs of the Church. The second fundamental element of the Fátima message is devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The Virgin said clearly, God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart. This devotion is not something sentimental or superficial. It is a sure path of sanctification and salvation. The Immaculate Heart of Mary is the heart that was never stained by sin, that loved God with perfect love from the first instant of its existence, that said yes to the divine will in the Annunciation and remained faithful at the foot of the cross. When we consecrate our lives to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, we ask her to transform us, to purify our hearts of selfishness and sin, to teach us to love as she loved, to lead us to her Son Jesus. Consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary is not in competition with consecration to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. On the contrary, it is the path that leads us most perfectly to Christ, because no one knows Jesus as his mother knows him, no one loves him as she loved him. No one can form us in the Christian life as she can. Saint Louis Marie Grignon de Montfort taught that true devotion to Mary is the shortest, easiest, and surest way to reach Jesus. And Fátima confirms this teaching with the seal of heavenly approval. The third element is the communion of reparation on the first Saturdays. In the 1925 apparition to Sister Lucia in Pontevedra, the Virgin explained this practice. Receive communion in reparation for 5 consecutive first Saturdays. Go to confession, pray the rosary, and spend 15 minutes meditating on the mysteries of the rosary, all with the intention of making reparation to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Our Lady promised, to all those who, on the first Saturday of 5 consecutive months, go to confession, receive Holy Communion, recite the rosary, and keep me company for 15 minutes while meditating on the mysteries of the rosary, with the intention of making reparation to me, I promise to assist them at the hour of death with all the graces necessary for salvation. It is an extraordinary promise, the promise of eternal salvation for those who practice this devotion. Why does the Virgin ask for this reparation? Because her Immaculate Heart is constantly pierced by 5 types of offenses: blasphemies against her Immaculate Conception, blasphemies against her virginity, blasphemies against her divine maternity, while at the same time refusing to recognize her as Mother of mankind. The offenses of those who publicly seek to instill in children's hearts indifference, contempt, and even hatred toward this Immaculate Mother, and the offenses of those who outrage her directly in her sacred images. How these offenses multiply in our days. Practicing the communion of reparation on the first Saturdays is an act of filial love toward our Heavenly Mother, consoling her for all the outrages she receives, uniting ourselves to Christ in His work of reparation. The fourth element of the Fátima message is penance and sacrifice for the conversion of sinners. From the first apparition, the Virgin asked the children if they were willing to offer sacrifices in reparation for sins. This aspect of the message can be difficult for our modern mentality that seeks comfort and flees from suffering. But the three shepherd children lived it heroically. They fasted, gave their food to the poor, spent hours in prayer on their knees, deprived themselves of drinking water on hot days, wore a rough cord tied around their waist that caused them pain. Why did they do this? Because they had understood the vision of hell, because they had seen where souls who die in mortal sin go, and they burned with desire to save souls from that eternal damnation. Our Lady does not ask us to seek extraordinary sufferings or to practice mortifications that might damage our health, but she does call us to embrace with redemptive love the sacrifices that daily life presents to us, the setbacks of work, illnesses, misunderstandings, the difficulties of living together, the temptations we must reject. Each of these small crosses, offered with love for the conversion of sinners, has immense value before God. Sainte Thérèse of Lisieux taught that there is no small sacrifice when it is done for love. A glass of water offered with love is worth more than great penances done out of vanity. The key is in the intention, in consciously offering our sufferings and sacrifices for souls who are in danger of being condemned. The fifth element is personal conversion. Fátima is, above all, a call to conversion, to change our lives, to abandon sin and return to God. We cannot promote devotion to Fátima if we ourselves live in contradiction with the gospel. Conversion implies an honest examination of conscience about our lives. Am I living in God's grace, or are there mortal sins I must confess? Am I truly striving to live the commandments and teachings of the Church, or have I been infected by the moral relativism of the world? Do I pray every day, participate in Sunday Mass, frequently approach the sacraments, or have I fallen into the spiritual lukewarmness that is so common in our days? The book of Revelation warns us that God vomits out the lukewarm. Our Lady of Fátima calls us to be radical Christians in the good sense of the word, Christians who live their faith with conviction, with coherence, without half measures. This also implies courage to witness our faith in a hostile world, to defend Christian values when they are attacked, to educate our children in the true faith without being intimidated by the dominant culture. Conversion is not a one-time event, but a continuous process, a lifelong journey in which, with God's grace and Mary's intercession, we are progressively transformed into saints. The sixth fundamental element is the spreading of the Fátima message. The Virgin told Lucia that Jesus wanted to use her to make the Immaculate Heart of Mary known and loved. Each one of us is called to be an apostle of Our Lady of Fátima, to spread this message of conversion and hope. How can we do this? First, by living the message ourselves, being living testimonies of the transformation that devotion to Mary produces in souls. A coherent testimony is worth more than 1,000 words. Second, by speaking about Fátima to our family members, friends, co-workers, with respect but with conviction. Third, by using modern means of communication to spread the message, social networks, blogs, videos, podcasts. Fourth, by promoting in our parishes devotion to the Rosary, first Saturdays, consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Fifth, by supporting apostolic works dedicated to spreading Fátima, like the Alliance of the Holy Rosary, the Heralds of the Gospel, and so many others. The world urgently needs the Fátima message. Millions of souls are in danger of eternal damnation. Our Heavenly Mother has come to show us the path of salvation. Will we remain indifferent, or will we respond generously to her maternal call? The spiritual fruits of living the Fátima message are abundant and transforming. Those who sincerely give themselves to this devotion experience a deep peace that the world cannot give, a peace that comes from knowing that we are in the hands of our Heavenly Mother and that she leads us surely toward her Son. They also experience a gradual but real conversion, a growing detachment from sin and a growing love for God. The daily rosary transforms our mentality, making us think more as Christ thinks, see things with the eyes of faith instead of with the worldly gaze. Frequent confession and communion of reparation purify our soul, making it more receptive to divine grace. The spirit of sacrifice frees us from the slavery of selfishness and hedonism, teaching us that true happiness is not in seeking our own pleasure, but in giving ourselves for love of God and neighbor. And above all, consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary makes us experience in a very real way the maternal love of the Virgin, her powerful protection, her effective intercession. Saint Bernadette of Lourdes said that the Virgin looked at her as a mother looks at her daughter. Each of us can experience that same gaze of love if we open ourselves to the grace of Fátima. Testimonies of extraordinary conversions abound among devotees of Fátima. The miracle of the sun itself converted thousands of people who had gone to Cova da Iria as skeptics or curious onlookers and returned transformed, convinced believers that heaven had intervened. Over the course of a century, millions of pilgrims have visited the Fátima sanctuary, many of them far from God, and have experienced there profound encounters with Christ and His Mother. Hardened sinners have thrown themselves at the feet of the confessional, weeping for their sins. Marriages on the brink of rupture have been reconciled. Desperate people have found reasons to live. Sick people have experienced physical and spiritual healings. Young people have discovered their vocations. Entire families have consecrated themselves to the Immaculate Heart of Mary and have seen peace, love, and God's blessing flourish in their homes. These are not isolated cases, but abundant fruits that continue to manifest wherever the Fátima message is welcomed with faith and generosity. Is this not the best argument for the authenticity of the apparitions? By their fruits you will know them, Jesus said. And the fruits of Fátima are conversion, holiness, peace, love of God, and Mary. The Catholic Church, after a rigorous process of discernment, has officially recognized the apparitions of Fátima as worthy of belief. Already on October 13, 1930, barely 13 years after the events, the Bishop of Leiria declared the visions of the shepherd children worthy of credence and officially authorized the cult of Our Lady of Fátima. Since then, all the popes have shown special devotion to Fátima. Pius XII AÑOS consecrated the world to the Immaculate Heart of Mary in 1942 in the midst of World War II. Paul VI was a pilgrim to Fátima in 1967 on the 50th anniversary of the apparitions. John Paul II went 3 times and attributed to the protection of Our Lady of Fátima his survival of the assassination attempt of May 13, 1981. Benedict XVI also made a pilgrimage to Fátima in 2010, and Pope Francis canonized Francisco and Jacinta Marto in 2017 on the centenary of the apparitions and has consecrated the world to the Immaculate Heart of Mary several times, especially in the face of the war in Ukraine. This constant veneration by the papal magisterium is a powerful confirmation of the authenticity and importance of the Fátima message for the Church and for the world. But beyond ecclesiastical recognition, there is the testimony of history itself. The prophecies of Fátima have been fulfilled with an accuracy that defies any naturalistic explanation. The prediction of the end of World War I, the beginning of another worse war during the pontificate of Pius X, the sign of the aurora borealis in 1938, the expansion of atheist communism from Russia, the terrible persecutions against the Church in the 20th century, the assassination attempt against the Pope, the unexpected fall of Soviet communism after the consecration of Russia, all of this cannot be mere coincidence. It is the historical confirmation that God had spoken in Fátima through His Most Holy Mother. And if God spoke in 1917, His word has not expired. It continues to be current and urgent for us today. The message of conversion, of prayer, of penance, of consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary is as necessary now as it was then, perhaps even more necessary given the unprecedented challenges that the Christian faith faces in the 21st century. There are those who argue that Fátima belongs to the past, that it was relevant for the historical context of the early 20th century, but no longer has validity in our days. Nothing could be further from the truth. We need only look at today's world to realize how prophetic and current Our Lady's word is. She warned us against atheistic materialism. And do we not live in a society that has expelled God from public life, that is governed by purely material and economic criteria, that has lost the sense of the transcendent? She warned us about the errors that would spread from Russia, and although political communism has fallen, do we not see how gender ideology, abortion, euthanasia, moral relativism, all daughters of atheistic materialism, have spread throughout the world, even being imposed by international organizations and governments that call themselves democratic? She showed us hell to remind us that souls are condemned, and do we not see how even many Catholics have stopped believing in hell, in God's judgment, in the need for conversion? She called us to the prayer of the Rosary, and do we not see how this practice has been abandoned even in Catholic homes? She asked us for communion of reparation, and how many Catholics regularly approach confession and communion with a spirit of reparation. The diagnosis that Our Lady made in Fátima about the spiritual condition of humanity remains painfully current, and the remedy she proposed remains the only effective path of salvation. In these times of doctrinal confusion, of division in the Church, of moral crisis in society, the Fátima message shines like a beacon of clarity and hope. It reminds us of fundamental truths that the world wants to forget, that God exists and loves us, that Jesus is the only Savior, that Mary is our mother and powerful intercessor, that sin is real and has eternal consequences, that hell exists and souls are condemned, that heaven is our goal and we can reach it with God's grace, that prayer and sacrifice have power to change the world, that good will triumph over evil because the Mother of God has promised it. These truths are not matters of opinion nor negotiable. They are the foundation of our Catholic faith, and Fátima proclaims them with crystal clarity, without ambiguities, without concessions to the spirit of the world. That is why the Fátima message makes some uncomfortable, because it demands radical conversion, because it calls sin by its name, because it does not accommodate itself to contemporary relativist mentality. But precisely for this reason, it is so necessary to listen to it and live it. The final promise of the Fátima message is luminous and certain. In the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. It is not a possibility. It is a prophetic certainty. The Immaculate Heart of Mary will triumph over evil, over sin, over Satan. Christ already conquered on the cross, and Mary participated in a unique way in that victory as co-redemptrix of the human race. But that definitive triumph will be manifested visibly in history, when the promise of Fátima is fully fulfilled. We do not know when that day will come. It may be soon, or it may still take time. God has His times, which are not ours. But it will come with certainty, because God does not lie, and what He has promised through the mouth of His mother will be fulfilled. Meanwhile, our task is to work to hasten that triumph with our prayer, our sacrifices, our fidelity, our consecration. Each rosary we pray, each communion of reparation we make, each sacrifice we offer, each soul we help to convert, is one more stone in the construction of that kingdom of Mary that is to come. We do not work in vain. We do not fight for a lost cause. We work and fight for a victory that is already assured by divine promise. Dear brother, dear sister in the faith, if you have come this far in this journey through the Fátima message, it is because the Holy Spirit has touched your heart, because our Heavenly Mother is calling you personally to be part of her army of consecrated souls. Do not ignore this call. Today, right now, you can begin to live the Fátima message. You can consecrate yourself to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, entrusting to her your life, your family, your future. You can commit to praying the daily rosary, even if it is just one mystery if you do not have time for more, but pray it with faith and devotion. You can plan to make the 5 first Saturdays of the month, approaching confession and communion with a spirit of reparation. You can look for small daily sacrifices to offer for the conversion of sinners. You can study more deeply the Fátima message, read the memoirs of Sister Lucia, meditate on the words of Our Lady. You can become an apostle of this devotion, spreading the message among your loved ones. Do not wait until tomorrow. Do not postpone your response. The Virgin is waiting for your yes, as she waited for the yes of those 3 children in 1917. And your yes, however small it may seem to you, is immensely valuable for the plan of salvation that God has for the world. Our Lady of Fátima did not come to frighten us, but to save us. Yes, she showed us terrible realities like hell and the consequences of sin, but she did it moved by her maternal love, so that we would not be lost eternally. Along with the warning, she gave us the remedy. She showed us the way. Her Immaculate Heart is our secure refuge in the midst of the storms of this world. Whoever consecrates himself to her and faithfully lives her message has the promise of eternal salvation. What greater gift could our Heavenly Mother give us? In a world full of uncertainties, of fears, of threats, we have the certainty that if we remain with Mary, she will surely lead us to Jesus. Let us not fear the future, however dark it may seem. Let us remember the words that the angel of Portugal taught the shepherd children. Do not be afraid. God is more powerful than all the evil in the world, and Mary is the powerful mother who crushes the head of the serpent. The final triumph is hers, and it will be ours if we remain faithful. I want to end this reflection with a prayer of consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. If your heart feels moved, you can make this consecration your own right now, pronouncing it with faith and love. O Immaculate Heart of Mary, refuge of sinners and mother of mercy, before you I prostrate myself with humility and confidence. I recognize that I am a sinner and that I have gravely offended God with my faults. But I trust in your maternal love and in your powerful intercession. Today I consecrate myself totally to you, my mother. I entrust to you my life, my family, my present and my future. I entrust to you my joys and my sorrows, my successes and my failures, my health and my illnesses, I place everything in your maternal hands. I promise to pray the rosary daily, to make the communion of reparation on the first Saturdays when possible, to offer sacrifices for the conversion of sinners, and to live faithfully my Catholic faith. Help me to fulfill these resolutions. Give me strength in my weakness. Enlighten me in my doubts. Console me in my sorrows. Protect me from all evil and lead me surely to Jesus. Most Holy Virgin of Fátima, pray for me, for my family, for the Church, and for the entire world. May your promise be fulfilled in me and through me. In the end, your Immaculate Heart will triumph. Amen. If this message has touched your heart, if you have felt the call of Our Lady of Fátima, do not keep it to yourself. Share it with your brothers and sisters in the faith, with your family members, with your friends. The world urgently needs this message of conversion and hope. Each soul that discovers Fátima and embraces its message is one more victory for the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Subscribe to this channel to continue deepening in the riches of our Catholic faith, to continue discovering the treasures of Marian devotion, to walk together toward the holiness that God calls us to live. Remember that you are not alone on this path. We are millions of Catholics throughout the world who have consecrated our lives to the Immaculate Heart of Mary and who work and pray for the triumph of her heart. United in prayer, united in the Rosary, united in love for Jesus and Mary, we will form that invincible army that will prepare the way for the kingdom of God on earth. May Our Lady of Fátima bless you, protect you, and lead you each day closer to her Son Jesus. Until our next encounter, remain faithful, pray the Rosary, live your faith with joy and hope. The Immaculate Heart of Mary will triumph. Amen.